She was once born in the Warring States era, a brilliant mind like Hawking, and survived by fulfilling others' wishes to kill, feeding on their desires and hatred to maintain her own existence. But now, in this modern world, she was working for just 50 cents, helping people fix pipes, clean houses, and do chores. One day, a monster born from negative human emotions set its sights on a girl, and the girl began to pray desperately for divine help. And right then, Yadu, for only 50 cents, accepted the request and came to slay the monster. Yadu leapt into the air, summoning her partner, and the girl beside her, Banye, instantly transformed into a weapon that landed firmly in Yadu's hand. Facing the ferocious beast, Yadu moved with fluid, elegant precision, and without the slightest struggle, the monster was effortlessly defeated. But Banye, looking irritated, scolded Yadu for being just a nameless, mediocre novel heroine, and abruptly resigned, canceling their contract before skipping off cheerfully, leaving Yadu no choice but to go back to posting flyers and advertising her services again. Just then, she received a phone call. Someone was begging her to help find a lost cat named Lord. While searching for the cat on the street, she suddenly spotted it across the road and dashed forward, only to be shoved aside by a girl who saved her from being hit by a fast-approaching bus. That girl, who scolded Yadu for being reckless, turned around in confusion as Yadu pointed behind her, and she realized she herself had just been hit by the bus and lay sprawled on the ground. The girl, named Ryua, later regained consciousness in a hospital, surprisingly with only minor scrapes. But before she could even process what had happened, she fell back asleep. In the middle of the night, while still sleeping, Ryua was startled awake by strange noises, and just as she was still shaken, Yadu suddenly appeared under her blanket, causing Ryua to scream and jump onto the sofa in terror. Yadu calmly explained that she had come to check if Ryua was alright, and introduced herself as a member of the 800 Divine Sects, boldly claiming her name would one day echo across the world, and she would be known by 1 billion people and stand atop the world. Ryua looked at her goofy smile in disbelief and speechlessness, and after confirming Ryua was okay, Yadu simply vanished. As Ryua tried to speak again, the exhaustion of her body took over, and she fainted. The next day, Yadu found Lord the cat in an alley, but unexpectedly attracted a monster's attention. As she tried to flee, a giant toad monster blocked her path, and when she attempted to fight, she remembered she didn't have her sacred weapon. Just then, Ryua suddenly appeared and saved her, only to get captured by the toad monster herself. But astonishingly, Ryua kicked the monster away with a single blow, giving Yadu a chance to grab her and escape, safely returning Lord and fulfilling the child's wish. Yadu explained to Ryua that she was now in a soul state. Her real body was still lying elsewhere, and because of the accident, she now existed between the world of the living and the dead, having survived, but also turned into a yokai. Ryua asked Yadu to help her return to normal, and Yadu agreed, but only for 50 cents. Annoyed by the ridiculous amount, Ryua angrily rummaged through her bag and handed over the coin. In this world, yokai are everywhere, hiding in shadows, floating through the sky, or clinging silently to people's shoulders, all spirits from the other side. Only animals, hawks, and those who walk the taboo border between life and death can see them. One day, while still advertising her services on the train, Yadu received a call from Ryua asking when her body could be healed. Even doubting if Yadu was legit, Yadu appeared instantly, and Ryua explained that her soul would unconsciously leave her body, which was dangerous. Yadu admitted that she hadn't found a sacred weapon yet, but once she had one, anything would be possible. Just then, her phone rang again, and she flashed away, leaving Ryua confused and frustrated in the wind. Clearly, relying on Yadu alone wasn't enough. If she wanted to heal faster, she'd have to take action herself. She started helping Yadu search for a sacred weapon, and, upon seeing a little whale, asked if it would be willing to become one, but the whale quickly swam away. Before she could even finish asking another spirit, it too ran off in fear. Meanwhile, Yadu had just finished scrubbing the house when Ryua called to say she'd found her sacred weapon. Yadu blinked over, completely confused, and looked where Ryua pointed, only to instantly pale in horror, realizing that wasn't a sacred weapon at all. It was clearly a monster. She grabbed Ryua, and the two tried to flee, but Ryua's soul once again separated, leaving her body behind. Just as the monster lunged to attack, Ryua backflipped away from the blow, and feeling suddenly powerful in her current state, even began taunting the monster. But Yadu yanked her back by her tail, which turned out to be the life link connecting her soul to her body. If severed, she would die. As Yadu was grabbed and injured by the monster, she retaliated in rage, injuring the creature and escaping with Ryua. Hiding away, Yadu realized she'd been infected by the monster's curse, which could spread and corrode her body, and she urgently explained to Ryua that the tail wasn't actually a tail, but the soul thread. If it were cut, she'd die instantly. The monster returned again, and they had no choice but to flee once more. In the distance, Yadu spotted a pure-hearted citizen and rushed to form a contract. With this, her new sacred weapon manifested as a long blade. As the monster tried to swallow Yadu whole, she, now armed, fought back from inside its stomach, slashing fiercely and killing the beast. After the battle, Yadu removed the cursed infection and called her sacred weapon's name, letting it take human form. The spirit, now named Shuin, felt cold, cold. So Yadu took off her jacket and gently wrapped him in it. However, her body still carried the monster's infection, repeating like a curse. Yadu's body had truly been affected. She kindly told Shuin to keep the coat, but what she didn't expect was that this seemingly odd old man actually had 4 wives, and each one was stunningly beautiful. As beautiful as a blooming flower, she could rival any top idol group member today. That day, Yadu received a commission call and took Shuin along as she blinked to the location. What she didn't expect was that Ryua had followed them too. It turned out the one who summoned Yadu was the god of knowledge himself, and upon seeing this majestic and divine presence, Ryua couldn't help but marvel at how this was what a real god looked like. But when she turned to Yadu, who also called herself a god, she looked like nothing more than a walking joke. The god of knowledge's sacred tools all introduced themselves, and as the god smiled in serene perfection, Yadu couldn't take it anymore and asked him why he called her here. He explained that with exams approaching, he was overwhelmed and needed her to eliminate a monster, and even mocked her for having nothing better to do, going as far as to ask her former tool, Banye, to guide her. Yadu was shocked but followed anyway, and Banye led them underground, explaining how petrification had become common here. Petrification came from overwhelming negative emotions, and yokai would take advantage of that vulnerability to possess people. Those who couldn't be purified would die and lose their lives forever. But Yadu coldly said that if someone wants to die, let them. Once possessed by a yokai, a suicidal soul could no longer become a sacred tool, so whether they live or die, they were beyond saving. Ryua, horrified by her words, stared at Yadu and decided to face the monster alone. At that moment, a yokai sat on a man's shoulder, whispering dark thoughts when Ryua suddenly appeared from nowhere and launched a flying kick that sent the yokai flying. But by angering them, she was surrounded by yokai and pushed off the platform. 2 of them tied her to the railway tracks as a train approached. Just before impact, Yadu appeared and sliced through the yokai, saving her in the nick of time. But ahead, 2 more yokai appeared, trying to lure another boy in glasses onto the tracks. As he prepared to climb over the railing, Yadu sprinted forward, summoning her blade Shuin, which transformed into a great sword, and with one slash, she killed the giant hand yokai and sent waves of sword energy rippling through the air. Clearly, Shuin's power was immense. She saved the boy and then revealed that the reason she said such cruel things was because people no longer respected life. Ryua finally understood. Before becoming sacred tools, these beings had all desperately wanted to live. This sword wasn't just powerful enough to kill monsters, it could even sever the bonds between lovers. Yadu, jobless and idle after losing commissions, used to fantasize about rising to divine glory overnight. But after Ryua's kind and honest words, he adjusted his mindset and decided to take her to meet someone. They arrived at a convenience store, where a girl suddenly dashed out and threw herself into Yadu's arms. Ryua and Shuin were stunned. They couldn't believe someone like him could have a girlfriend. But then Yadu began playing the victim, and the girl, Xiaofu, quickly pulled out a thick wad of cash to comfort him. The 2 were speechless, but then a loud shout came from inside, and Yadu was kicked flying out the door. It turned out that Xiaofu was actually Ebisu, one of the 7 lucky gods, and the big guy beside her was her sacred tool, Dahe, who was deeply obsessed with her. The group chatted happily, and Xiaofu even compared her figure with Ryua's, but she warned them that Yadu was actually a dangerous god, which confused them. Soon after, Yadu got a commission and the group hurried to leave. Meanwhile, on the rooftop of a tall building, a man wrote his will and prepared to jump, but Yadu suddenly dropped from the sky and slammed into him, sending both tumbling down. This man was no coward either. They exchanged business cards mid-fall. The man had tried to call his family for a final goodbye, but ended up calling Yadu instead. He recounted how he'd met a girl on the street and fallen for her at first sight. They became a couple, but soon bad luck followed. His company's performance plummeted and he went bankrupt. So now he was giving up. But Yadu, sensing something off, asked to see a photo of the girl. Just as he suspected, it was Xiaofu. She was actually the god of poverty. Yadu advised the man to leave her immediately. The poverty goddess brought endless misfortune and was far older than she appeared, but the man refused to forget her. Seeing how stubborn he was, Yadu punched him back to his senses, then summoned Shuin. The man finally landed safely, and later, the group found Xiaofu again. Was it all my fault? She said. Sure, Ryusei and I had fun, but before she could finish, the truth spilled out. Xiaofu was also a player. Dahe was heartbroken but powerless. He praised Shuin for her amazing feat, cutting down Yin Flame on her very first mission, something even veteran sacred tools couldn't achieve. Before leaving, Ryua asked Xiaofu why she said Yadu was so dangerous. Xiaofu explained that Yadu had once slashed a sacred tool. All she'd heard about him before were terrible rumors. In fact, Yadu used to be a goddess and had once even cut down people. Ryua was terrified, but Dahe just shook his head and said those days were long gone. Back then, it was either kill or be killed. Gods are born from human wishes. Well-known gods get prayed to and worshipped constantly, but nameless gods are different. Many are forgotten. To avoid being erased, they do anything as long as someone wishes for it. Hearing this, Ryua felt a storm of emotions. She asked Yadu why he brought her to meet Xiaofu. Gently, Yadu wrapped his his arm around her shoulder, and on the other side, Shuin waited alone, remembering Yadu's earlier words, feeling a quiet warmth rise in her chest. Just then, a girl appeared silently beside her. Her body was covered with countless contract marks, and Shuin stared in shock. A new stray god had appeared. Don't be fooled by her curvy figure. Her combat power was even more fierce. A monster so dangerous it took 3 gods to destroy. This woman obliterated with just 2 shots. Because Shuin had performed well in her earlier mission, Yadu decided to teach her a new skill, Boundary Line. This power, unique to sacred tools, could block yokai. Yadu asked her to draw a line in front of her with 2 fingers. To his surprise, she succeeded on the first try. He was stunned. Even though this power belonged to all sacred tools, to generate such a powerful barrier on the first try was extraordinary. In all his hundreds of years, he had never seen a sacred tool like her. Just then, Ryua asked Yadu about that woman earlier. Was the child really his sacred tool? The male lead said she was just some random girl he messed around with, which made Ryua decide that Shuin should come live with her instead. Staying with that guy would definitely lead her down the path of a delinquent. Ryua arranged for Shuin to live in her older brother's room, thinking she could keep it hidden from her parents and had now gained a little brother. But her joy barely lasted 2 minutes before her parents suddenly returned, and to her horror, the male lead followed right behind them. Ryua was speechless. It turned out he came because he was genuinely worried about Shuin. Normal homes were not like shrines. They lacked spiritual protection and could be vulnerable to yokai attacks. That night, as darkness fell, strange beings began to stir. It was the night of birthing demons. Knowing Shuin feared the dark, he worried she wouldn't be able to endure it. Sure enough, Ryua's dad turned off the bedroom lights and Shuin, scared, ran into Ryua's room. Ryua didn't mind at all and invited him to sleep next to her. She fell asleep quickly, but the inexperienced young Shuin couldn't calm his restless heart and lay wide awake. He couldn't resist turning over, and just as he reached out a hand toward her in impulse, the male lead suddenly appeared behind him and delivered a lecture on morality. Shuin was furious, asking why he even cared. He had another magical girl anyway, didn't he? Meanwhile, in another part of the city, a voluptuous woman was riding a lion through the sky, hunting a yokai. She casually fired 2 shots and obliterated it, and her lion landed gracefully atop a building. The next day, while out shopping with Ryua, Shuin, confident that ordinary people couldn't see him, snatched a skateboard from a wall and began riding through the mall. Ryua immediately stopped him, scolding him and explaining that such behavior was theft. But when she hung the board back, she realized Shuin had disappeared. Though he was now Yadu's sacred tool, beneath that title, he was still just a child. But what Shuin couldn't accept was that no matter how hard he tried to befriend others or get along, people would always forget about him the moment they turned away. As someone from the other shore, he could never truly belong here. It wasn't the lack of money that hurt most, but the pain of being forgotten. In agony, Shuin's mind echoed with Noragami's cruel words. Enraged, he lost control and began smashing glass, trying desperately to be seen, his cries of pain echoing as he ran. Meanwhile, Yadu was suffering from a rapidly worsening infection called itch, but Shuin had no idea. Suddenly, Ryua remembered that Yadu once told her if anything ever happened, she should take him to Xiaofu. In soul form, Ryua touched Yadu and finally understood how unbearably painful the itch was. Only then did the unruly child Shuin stop his rampage, completely unaware that Yadu's condition was a direct result of his own actions. Ryua was done being gentle. Furious, she lashed out at Shuin. When the group finally reached Xiaofu's town, begging for help to save Yadu, Dahe snapped, threatening, "Die, Shuin, one punch is all it'd take." Seeing Yadu barely clinging to life on the floor and Shuin still defiant, Xiaofu realized the child had already fallen into darkness. The only way to save Yadu now was to punish the one responsible, but Yadu had no strength left to do it. There was one other way, to use the illegal purification method, but that required the power of 3 sacred tools. Dahe set out at once to every shrine, but the danger of the punishment meant no one was willing to help. Only one person came, Mayu, who had once served Yadu. No others came. Dahe returned disappointed, while Shuin tried to run but was blocked by Kazuma. The 3rd sacred tool had arrived. Ryua had split from them and risked her safety to persuade Kazuma from Bishamon's side, even though Bishamon and Yadu were mortal enemies. No one knew what Kazuma was thinking as he peeled back Yadu's clothes, revealing his body nearly consumed by infection. Even so, Yadu refused to let Shuin go, but Shuin yelled, "Shut up! What are you 2 doing?" Seeing Shuin stubbornly lie and show no remorse, Dahe angrily tore off his coat. With undeniable evidence before them, the 3 sacred tools surrounded Shuin and formed a purification barrier. Light shot into the sky, and for the first time, Shuin felt the searing pain that had once only tormented Yadu. When Dahe demanded the truth, Shuin not only refused to admit fault, but even threatened to kill him. Fueled by rage, Shuin's transformation deepened. He began to morph into a yokai. The trio tightened the circle, but this only made Shuin thrash violently. For a child, this punishment was undeniably cruel. Even Ryua couldn't bear to watch. But Shuin's unrepentant attitude meant this was the only path left. At the heart of it all, this tragedy stemmed from hope crushed by reality. reality. Shuin just wanted to live like a normal person, but those from the other shore are already dead. How could they ever hope for more? As the infection reached its peak, Yadu used the last of his strength to cry out Shuin's name, trying to pull him back from the brink, but he couldn't even form the words. Just then Ryua, who had been thrown aside, stood up again and rushed towards Shuin, determined to reach him with her words. She reminded him that he was never alone. The one who brought him back, who gave him a name, had never once given up on him, and now Shuin had almost killed him. Ryua, heartbroken, declared she wanted to sever their friendship. Hearing this, Shuin froze. His only friend was abandoning him. At the same time, Yadu summoned all his strength to shout, and finally, Shuin snapped out of it. He admitted his mistake and promised never to do it again. Seeing Yadu's battered and broken body, Shuin lowered his head in shame. From now on, he would truly change. Because in love, the deepest pain is not when someone hates you, but when they forget you completely. As dusk fell over the rooftop, a suffocating sense of doom lingered in the air. The oppressive tension made Ryua break out in cold sweat, and yet Yadu, unaware, continued eliminating misunderstandings, completely clueless about what was coming next. Upon seeing Ryua again, he never expected that she wouldn't recognize him at all. After that encounter on the rooftop, Fei-Chi had taken Ryua away, erasing every memory she had of Yadu. So no matter how beautiful, sorrowful, or heartbroken Yadu was, in Ryua's eyes, he was now nothing more than a ridiculous stranger. And Fei-Chi's reason for doing this was simple: to awaken Yadu's true nature as the fierce god of calamity he once was. The one standing against him now, Ginbang, was far beyond Yadu in both strength and the might of his sacred tools. But if Yadu wanted to recover Ryua's memories, he had no choice but to defeat Ginbang. Yet how could he possibly overcome him? Long ago, Ginbang had been just like him. Both of them were once gods of calamity, fighting side by side and feared by all. But those days were gone. Unlike the past where he lived only to kill, Yadu now wished to bring peace and blessing to the people. And perhaps, he thought, forgetting him might actually be better for Ryua. It would keep her safe from the troubles of the other side. With that thought, Yadu wandered aimlessly home, ignoring Shuin's pleas to help Ryua regain her memories. But Shuin wasn't ready to give up. The sketchbook she held, filled with drawings of the trio's past, was her last stand. The next day, holding on to a sliver of hope, she joyfully brought Ryua to share their memories. She reminded her how stunned she looked when she first saw Shuin open a barrier, and how it was Ryua who had risked everything to help her when she nearly lost control and turned into a yokai. But now, Ryua remembered only Shuin, and even those memories were slipping fast. Before they knew it, she had forgotten Shuin completely. If this continued, and Yadu didn't defeat Ginbang, Ryua would become nothing more than a hollow shell. That night, Shuin cried as she confessed to Yadu that she had been forgotten. Had Yadu still been a child, he too might have wept so openly. But now wasn't the time for despair. If they waited any longer, Ryua would never return. They had to find the courage. No one wants to be forgotten by the one they love. So no matter what it cost, whether Shuin collapsed or Yadu lost himself, they had to face Ginbang. Do you know how easy it is to break a god? All it takes is to toss a purple crystal in front of him. First give him hope, then destroy it. That's all it takes. And when that crystal shattered, the one a god loved would fall into eternal slumber. Who could bear that truth? Yadu, already emotionally dead, could only gently place Ryua aside. Rain fell softly as the enemy's dark smoke and mist never ceased, trying to push him into madness. Shuin followed orders swiftly, unraveling layers of spellwork, and Yadu's words now carried only a murderous chill. Suddenly, something shifted. The atmosphere cracked, and Ginbang was blasted back, slamming into a rock wall. Yadu, walking slowly from the distance, held an emotionless expression that radiated lethal force. Ginbang's betrayal reignited the same unstoppable strength Yadu once had during the Warring States era, the ruthless, unshakable god of calamity. These two gods, who once spilled blood together on barren battlefields with Awashiro, now faced each other in ruin. But this was exactly what Ginbang wanted, to stir up that familiar bloodlust. Channeling his thoughts, Ginbang summoned a blade of stone powered by the resentment of thousands. He performed a horrifying move. He consumed the power of petrification, forsaking his divinity in pursuit of even greater power, all to fight Yadu in glorious battle. Sword aura howled, strikes clashed, and Yadu gave everything he had, not just as one man, but as a god protecting Ryua. Ginbang's attacks didn't slow. Debris rained down, burying them both. But beneath the rubble, Yadu had shielded Ryua completely. In the realm of consciousness, memoryless Ryua drifted like a soul in limbo, yet something there pulled at her spirit, a warmth so familiar she instinctively wanted to hold it close. Yadu never imagined she would suddenly awaken. Filled with joy, he hugged her tightly, only to be elbowed aside as her fighter's instinct kicked in. But that moment shattered Ginbang's momentum. With Ryua's presence, Yadu didn't transform into that blood-soaked god he once was. And that was the very thing Ginbang couldn't accept. Enraged, he resolved to devour Ryua completely. But he had forgotten. After absorbing petrification, he was no longer divine. And when it came to yokai, gods could use law-based powers to suppress them. Seeing the determination on their faces, Ginbang knew this final final blow would be decisive. He tried to resist, but it was too late. This final attack destroyed not just Ryua, but also himself. Ginbang's body crumbled on the ground, vanishing into dust. Yet he had no regrets. He'd rather be sent off by the god of calamity than be forgotten in this age of peace. At last, Ryua was saved. On the way home, Yadu brought up the idea of cutting their ties, but she rejected it without hesitation. After everything they'd been through, she had completely fallen in love with this god, and Yadu, who had once charged 5 yuan offerings, would now stay by her side forever.